Hey guys, Anders here with another video. Today we got some leaks for the Awakening skills, so we're going to go over them and see what we have to work with in Awakened Drakania's kit. I should tell you I will have access to the class early over the weekend for the early access event, so we will be able to test out the skills and see how everything works. As always with these preview builds, things can and will probably change when we see the patch on live servers next week. For Succession, we saw some damage nerfs. We saw, I believe, some mana consumption nerfs when Drakania released compared to what I personally tested in early access. We could be seeing something similar here with her Awakening, so keep that in mind as we go through the skills. So let's go through her main skills first. Her basic attack is called Tryon Training. Now Tryon is the name of Drakania's Awakening weapon. Nothing really that special here, though we do have a floating CC on the basic second hit, which is always nice to see. Impale is another skill. It's Drakania's grapple skill. So yes, she does have a grab. It is a floating CC 15-second cooldown with some hefty damage. You can continue the attack for a second hit and a possible down smash effect if you want. It is not a range grab since those grabs tend to have a much longer cooldown, but the damage on this grapple skill seems strangely high. Burning Resolve is her Awakening E-buff. You get crit rate, you get some crit damage, and movement speed increases as well, which are all great choices for a class like Drakania. Accuracy on top of this I think would have been overkill, but we don't have that. We also have an interesting effect depending on which form you're in when you use your E-buff. So if you're in Hexeblood form, you gain a super armor for 3 seconds after you use this skill. If you're in Dragonblood form, you heal 5% of your HP. Both I think are very strong effects. The Flow Dragonflight skill is the really cool movement skill we saw in the trailer. It consumes 250 stamina on use, which is not that bad, and an additional 200 while evading and moving around with the skill, which is alright compared to Markthanen's Wings in her pre-awakening, which costs 400 stamina flat. That's actually not that bad in comparison. We did see the distance you travel was fairly large in the trailer, so stamina cost per meter of movement I think is pretty good for this skill. You can also activate this skill after using Markthanen's Wings in pre-awakening or Refraction pre-awakening or Awakening as well. The cooldown of 15 seconds is on the longer side, but I think a solid skill overall. Fate Beckons is your typical WF skill you see on some classes. You have some movement, protected, low cooldown, alright damage. You can use it after Dragonflight to attack after your dash, which I think is nice. The skill has a CC in PvE only. There is no way to make it work in PvP through a bond skill, for example, since bond skills are only for the Hexeblood skills in Drakania Awakening. Now Hexeblood Dragonblood, what is that? Drakania Awakening is kind of unusual in that there are two different styles of forms that you can play, so Hexeblood and Dragonblood. To better understand how this works, we kind of need to look at this skill called Legacy. This skill is basically your identity. The main mechanic in Awakening revolves around Legacy and Hexeblood and Dragonblood. It's on a 4-second cooldown. It has a forward guard. This allows you to switch from Hex form to Dragon form and then use your skills accordingly. You'll notice that the same skill will have two versions, the Hex version and a Dragon version. So if you look at Extinction, we see that the damage is about the same, though the Dragon version should hit for more since it has more crit, and we also saw that Dragon form has super armor on top of it as well, so that makes it fairly easy to use. This is where we're kind of limited, honestly, in our information from these leaks, because these are just tooltip leaks. We don't have any way of testing these skills right now. On paper, Extinction with Dragonblood form is just better, but we don't know if there are animation speed differences for each form. So from the trailer, it was pretty apparent that Hexeblood form skills are faster and Dragonblood skills are slower. So despite Extinction looking better in Dragonblood form, the Hex form could be just as good or better depending on the situation. We'll know more when we see the animations and testing, but for now understand that Hexeblood skills sometimes have a twin Dragonblood skill, so using Legacy after skills or Hex or Dragon type skills through quick slots to switch forms is going to be crucial in your Awakening play. Hopefully I haven't lost you. Now personally I really like this approach that they've taken with the Awakening. I was kind of hoping it wasn't going to be boring because Succession after a while is fairly straightforward, nothing that exciting about the ion skills and the ion generation and consumption. But with Awakening, from the get-go, we kind of get some room to experiment with two distinct styles and allow us to flow between each, or if you choose to stick with one style or the other. So let's go over the skills, starting with the Hexeblood skills. You'll notice I have the tier of add-on the skill has, if it has any, on top of the skill tooltip, so you just know. Tip of the scale has a tier 1 add-on. It's a 4-second cooldown, decent damage, health regen, and a 9% accuracy buff, as well as a stiffness and a knockdown CC. Great looking skill with a lot of utility. Spiteful Soul has a tier 2 add-on, 4-second cooldown, decent damage, health regen again, a 16 AP buff, which is nice, and a down smash. Another great looking skill, I think, with a great buff, and also a tier 2 add-on on such a low cooldown skill is always nice to see. Sundering Roar has a tier 2 add-on, 7-second cooldown, decent damage, and a stun CC. This skill allows you to swap the Hexeblood form if you use it from a quick slot, which I think is interesting. It could also provide some good utility. Now, Crackling Flame has a tier 1 add-on, a 3-second cooldown, so fairly low cooldown, low damage, and mana regen, and a 12% crit rate buff on use, so you don't need to land a hit, which makes this a great skill for pre-engage buffs in PvP and PvE. Hopefully the animation is quick as well. Savage Decree has a tier 2 add-on, 5-second cooldown, good damage, a floating CC. This skill looks alright, I think. You'll notice a lot of Hexeblood skills are spammable, just like this one. Aerial Burst has a tier 2 add-on, 7-second cooldown, low damage again, pushback in PvE, which I don't particularly like, stun in PvP, and knockdown CC as well as a 20 DP debuff effect. You can also switch into Hex form by using this skill from the quick slot. Lots of utility in this one skill. I kind of wish the damage was slightly higher, maybe a pull effect instead of a push effect in PvE, but not bad. Extinction is a flow skill for Sundering Roar, does good damage, and has a burn damage over time effect. Concealed Claw is a flow skill for Savage Decree, has a tier 2 add-on, 5-second cooldown, good damage with a floating CC. Another skill, well, you can place it in the quick slot to switch to Hexeblood form if you want. It also flows from Crackling Flame and Spiteful Soul, so a really flexible flow skill to use. Ascension is another flow skill for Aerial Burst this time. It basically makes Aerial Burst deal a lot more damage and have 100% crit rate, not bad at all. Tectonic Slam has a tier 2 add-on, 6-second cooldown, uses 150 stamina, so you know it's a movement skill, deals some decent damage, regens mana, and has a floating CC. You can instacast the skill as well if you have a target right in front of you. Storm Piercer, the last of our Hexeblood skills, has a tier 2 add-on, 4-second cooldown, good damage, health regen, knockdown CC, and a 10% attack speed buff. Amazing skill all around. The buff is on use as well, so again, no need to hit a target to gain the attack speed increase effect. So let's move on to Dragonblood Skills. Tip of the scale, again, we've seen this in Hexeblood. This one has a tier 1 add-on as well, 9-second cooldown, low damage, super armor, and a knockdown in PvE only. Notice our cooldowns in Dragonblood form are now longer, and now we have some protection on skills. Spiteful Soul has a tier 2 add-on, 8-second cooldown, decent damage, super armor again, and PvE floating CC. The flow Cloud Strife has an 8-second cooldown, great damage, and super armor. Sundering Roar is the Dragon Arm breath attack we saw in the trailer. Looks amazing. It has a tier 2 add-on, a 13-second cooldown, amazing damage, so much so that it is actually the hardest hitting skill in the entire game if all hits connect. It has super armor on the windup and a forward guard on the attack, and a 15% slow debuff on good hits. An insane skill to say the least. Can also switch you to Dragonblood form if used from the quick slot. Its flow is absolutely no slouch either. Extinction has great damage, super armor as well, and a pain damage over time effect. Crackling Flame has a tier 1 add-on, 3-second cooldown, low damage, mana regen, and an evasion debuff of 9%. The evasion debuff alone is quite nice, but no protection on this one makes it stand out as a kind of weird skill in the Dragonblood tree. Storm Piercer has a tier 2 add-on, 8-second cooldown, decent damage, forward guard, and a stun CC in PvE. Doombringer has our only tier 3 add-on in the kit, 10-second cooldown, which is fairly short for a tier 3 if I'm honest, a great damage, super armor, iframe into another super armor, down smash, and a floating CC in PvE. You can also go into dragon form when using this from the quick slot. Looks like we have some movement with this one because of no regen on stamina, so I can't wait to see what it actually looks like. Savage Decree has a tier 2 add-on, 5-second cooldown, good damage, down smash, and a 20 DP debuff. No protection on this one as well. And finally, Tectonic Slam has a tier 2 add-on, 8-second cooldown, good damage, forward guard, knockback in PvE, and you can switch to Dragonblood form if used through a quick slot. So a nice skill overall. Now before we get into the conclusion, we kind of need to check on our bond skills. Like I said, Hexeblood Skills are the only ones who get bond versions available. You can only choose one, but each bond basically gives us forward guard or super armor on a skill with CC. So tip of the scale, Aerial Burst, Tectonic Slam are all good options, it seems like. We'll know which ones are better once we see the animation in testing, but honestly, all of these options look good on paper. Protected CC is something Awakening Kit lacks, so using one of these bonds is going to give you a protected CC on top of the damage you're doing and on top of having that grab in your Awakening Kit. Speaking of damage, her 100% and 200% BSR skills seem to have basically no damage in PvP with those 70+% damage reductions. Expected, I think, but hopefully the 100% isn't too slow, which I think is one of the downsides of Drakania's pre-awakened 100%. It's way too slow of an animation to use in PvE if you're pushing for efficiency and grind. Also, keep in mind we're missing our Awakening BSR skills, so the 50%, 25%, and 10% versions. You should be seeing them in a couple of weeks. It will be interesting to see if they give more protection to some Hexeblood skills, or if those BSR skills give more hits to Dragonblood skills, giving them more damage. We'll see which direction they go in. So Hexeblood, Dragonblood, looks like it's going to be a dance between each form in Awakening. Now we know from the tooltips, Hexeblood has less damage, less protection, shorter cooldowns, more CC in PvP, bond skills, and we are assuming faster animations. Dragonblood skills, on the other hand, have more damage, more protection, longer cooldowns, less CC in PvP, and we're assuming larger AoE. You can switch between each form every 4 seconds through pressing E after a skill, which gives you the forward guard from Legacy, or straight using one of the skills I mentioned through a quick slot. Overall, an amazing looking Awakening kit. I can't wait to test out how it works, so stay tuned in the channel for more Drakania videos as I get to test out more things in the early access event. And that's it for this one. Let me know what you think about these Awakening skills. Do you think Awakening will be strong? Do you like the Hexeblood and Dragonblood concept? Let me know in the comments. And as always, thanks again for watching. Thanks for listening. I'll see you all in the next one. Take care.